Good morning. This is Tommy Stone with today's His Life devotional thought. Today is Monday, November the 16th. The reading for this week takes us to Matthew 16, beginning in verse 13. I just want to read this passage today because it sets the tone for the whole week of our devotional thoughts. It says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God," or "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." This section includes Peter's great confession of Jesus as the Christ. And as our devotional writer points out today, Peter joins the testimony of others in the story of Jesus, including the narrator of the Gospels, the wise men who came to honor Jesus as the newborn king, the baptizer John, the angels who testify to Jesus, and even demons who point out that he is the Christ. But today's devotional focuses on these first two questions and then what it means to confess. The first two questions you find here that Jesus asks are very important. They still are for us today too. Who do people say the Son of Man is? In other words, he's asking them, who do people say that I am? And their answers were varied and are interesting, aren't they? Some say John the Baptist. They were confusing him with John because they had similar messages, and but at this point in time, John has died, and so there's a lot of confusion there about this. Others say Elijah, a prophet in the spirit of Elijah was going to come according to Old Testament prophecy. Others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He certainly is a wonder worker, and he's prophetic in his teaching. So there's a lot of divided opinion on who Jesus is. And so Jesus simply asks, who do people say I am? I want to know what you have gathered from all these other sources about who I am. But then he says, what about you? Who do you say I am? That's a really important question for us to consider. Back then, they were looking for a Messiah, for a Christ, a figure that had been promised that would come, and a lot of misunderstanding about what that Christ or Messiah would do. But there was a lot of anticipation about that person, and many false messiahs, false Christs, had already put themselves forward to be considered Messiah material. And Jesus says, what about you? What do you think about me? Awfully important question to consider. What do we think about Jesus? In the day and age in which we live, people acknowledge Jesus and his place in history, acknowledge that he was a famous teacher, maybe even acknowledge, as many are going to here in the next month, that his birth was special in some kind of way, and that he comes from or represents God in some way. But to acknowledge that he is the Christ in the Jewish mind and even in the Gentile mind that you and I have today about Jesus is to say that he is much more than simply a prophet or an influential person in history. No, to say that he is Christ, to say that he is what the Bible claims him to be, is to claim much more. That he is God. That he is salvation for us. That he is the only way to the Father. That his death on the cross and his resurrection from the grave are the only hope that we have to stand before a holy God someday. Those are big, big shoes to fill. And Jesus doesn't shy away from that. He simply wants to know, what do we think about him? Because the answer to that question is so fundamentally important. Not only what we believe about the answer to that question, but how we live based on how we answer that question. If Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, if he is salvation for Jew and Gentile alike, then to confess that, as Peter does, Peter in one of his finest moments, right, says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And even if Peter didn't understand everything about what that meant, he certainly would after the resurrection. He is basically saying what he says in another place: if we leave you, where are we going to go? Who else has the words of eternal life? Who else? Indeed, Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And so to confess that certainly means to believe what Jesus acknowledges that Peter says is the right answer to that question, and what Peter himself says. To confess Jesus means, in the first place, to be able to acknowledge that that's true. I think it's an important part of accepting God's gift, to be able to confess with our mouth that that Jesus is the Christ. Important. But even more important than that, our devotional writer says that confessing that means to say or to speak the same thing. If we believe that, if we agree with it, then we're going to live by that, not just by our words, but also by our deeds. So today, it is important to know what people think about Jesus out there. But what do you say about who Jesus is? Is he the ticket to salvation for you? Or is he not simply that, but the Lord of your life, the King, the Christ, the Anointed One, the Messiah? And if he is, it makes a radical difference in how I live my life. I hope that you'll chew on that today. There's a lot to be said about this passage this week. And so we hope to join you Wednesday and Friday as well, again, in talking about this. I hope that you're able to say the same thing that Peter says, and to mean it in your words and in your deeds. We hope that you're doing well. We continue to covet your prayer requests here at the Red Bank Church of Christ. We'd love to pray on your behalf, whatever's going on in your life right now. And we're certainly continuing to pray for the situation in our country with this disease, with the political situation that continues to resolve itself, hopefully, at the end of this year. And whatever's going on in your life, we certainly hope that you will feel the blessing of God today. Thank you.